Hey, what's up, guys? So, a lot has happened since my last video. I'm going to pick up where we left off. For those of you guys that don't know, on January 1st, Narc announced that he is no longer playing Ashes of Creation, which isn't the issue with the situation. The issue is the video that he posted. So what has happened is multiple people have come out and posted videos. More recently, and more importantly, Stephen Sharif posted his own response video on his own YouTube channel talking about some of the issues that he had with Narc's video.
Hey Asmon, I just watched your video reviewing Narc's very unfortunate video about Ashes, and I wanted to take just a moment to go through a couple of the things that he says that I feel are really disingenuous and unfortunately paint a very negative light on myself, on the team, on the project, and I think that it's very intentional what he did in his video. And I think it's important to the viewers that they have an opportunity to really inspect and understand what Narc is saying and whether or not it's accurate and true and whether or not there's a bias there, and if he's trying to paint a picture that is overly negative for the purposes of trying to defame the project because of whatever reason that he's become discontent about us.
And this then created a situation to where Asmongold ended up covering both Narc and Stephen Sharif's video on his live stream a couple of days ago. And so, because of this, Narc wanted to talk to Asmongold and explain his point of view, and Stephen Sharif wanted to talk to Asmongold and explain his point of view, and Asmongold was able to have both of them on his live stream in back-to-back conversations. Now, his video is posted on YouTube. I will provide a link in the description if you want to go check it out. The entire video, the entire conversation is over 3 hours. I already did a live stream on it, already talked about it, and so I thought it would be good to do a summation of that video so that you guys have the main talking points as to what happened from all sides' point of view. So this video, what we're going to do is I'm going to highlight Narc's main points as I heard them. I am then going to highlight Stephen's main points as I've heard them. And then after that, after we've gotten both sides' point of view and both sides' arguments, I will then provide my overall opinion on the live stream itself. So that's what we're going to do in this video. It will be shorter than 3 hours. Hopefully this helps you guys understand where everybody's coming from. Let's dive into it. We first start off with Narc's conversation with Asmongold. And I wish I could tell you it was more in-depth than this, but for over an hour, the conversation revolved around the same 3 talking points.
We signed up to do a test, to test a video.
I feel like this has been going on for 30 minutes. Is he just going to keep going circular about this? Like the desert isn't fully complete and therefore all this is like, is this going to keep going on? And Asmongold is explaining how there are partitions and like they slowly add stuff over time and showcasing like the castle earlier. He's like, this is just one asset. Like you could just plop an asset anywhere. Like it's not a big deal. And he's explaining how that's different. And then it just keeps going back to this. Like for the last 2 years, it's been a lie. And then Asmongold has to explain that it's not a lie. Is this, I feel like we're playing fucking Groundhog's Day right now. These talking points are, number 1, the desert doesn't exist in the form that Intrepid posted it back in 2022. According to Narc, the Phase 2 expansion was supposed to incorporate some of these 2022 assets, and none of them are there. This part of the conversation received pushback from Asmongold at a few different places. Number 1, the main sticking point with Stephen was how Narc portrayed the initial part of the desert in his video. He showed the 2022 desert showcase, the cool assets and everything, and then he panned to an unfinished part of the desert in the world. And so Stephen responded in his video explaining that there is a large portion of the desert that does have these assets. They do have a portion of the content done. Obviously, there are unfinished areas. This was a lawless zone in Phase 1. And so he wanted to talk about, how misleading the initial video was. Because if you watch it, Asmongold's interpretation of it, Stephen's interpretation of it, and my interpretation of it was Narc implying that the entire desert was a barren wasteland. And because of that, it looks extremely misleading. So Asmongold pushed back at this and he said, hey, do you see how this could be an issue? Do you see how this could be misleading and how this could paint the wrong picture? And what Narc went on to explain is that he had already done a video covering the previously developed other part of the desert. And so he's under the assumption that because people watch his live streams, they already know that he covered the finished part of the desert. He's talking about the desert part that hasn't been expanded upon yet. And Narc's contention here is that for phase 2 that happened on December 20th, there is going to be a desert expansion. And that desert expansion meant to Narc that these unfinished areas will have content on them. They will have stuff. They will no longer be barren in the same way that they were. And so his point that he said on Asmongold's live stream is not that the entire desert is a wasteland. It is that this expansion area that he's talking about, this barren area, is not yet complete. And so that was his point of contention in his original video, and that was his overall clarification. So that was one of the arguments that Asmongold pushed back on. The second one that Asmongold pushed back on as well was the entire thought on alpha and beta development. And so there were multiple different times in this video. This went on for a while, as I showed earlier, where it just kept revolving around these same talking points. And Narc would ask Asmongold a question like, hey, if you knew back in 2022 what you know now about the current state of Alpha 2, would you still support Ashes of Creation? Because that is Narc's contention. Like, if he knew what it was going to be, he would no longer be supporting the game. And Asmongold every single time provided some answer of, yes, I have been a part of alphas and betas before. I have been a part of game development before on a smaller scale. I understand that things can be ready, but they're not yet implemented into the server. There's a difference between assets being developed and assets being able to function on their own, and assets being able to function and coordinate with other parts of games on a server. And he tries to explain this to Narc in multiple different ways.
So that's what I feel like they're doing. They're trying to fund, Steven's trying to fund the game at any cost, even if they have to lie and show fake things that aren't real at the time. Mm-hmm. It's just a concept that's going to eventually exist. If we'd known that, if I had known that, if you had known that, would you still have the same perception of the video game from 2 years ago?
Do you want my
know.
honest answer?
Yeah, go for it.
Absolutely. I've seen how a lot of games have been developed over the years, and I think this is very common. So, like, one thing, so I'll give you an example. Well, let me. This is an abstract example. I'll explain it. So, in Warlords of Draenor in WoW, the flying was never actually implied for what the Draenor continent was meant to be, and so in the process of flying not being implied and flying not be planned for, Blizzard had a massive, huge problem that caused server-wide issues when they had to implement flying later on in a later patch. And what I understand is that the interconnectivity of different systems causes a bunch of problems that exist inside of an ecosystem of other systems. So when somebody shows me a system inside of like its own ecosystem, like for example the Freehold, and I see that just by itself, I'm viewing that as like, this is what the finished product is supposed to look like. And I wouldn't necessarily expect to see that in the game immediately, because maybe that isn't contextualized and developed around all the other systems it's supposed to fit into. It's like kind of you're showing like a finished piece of a jigsaw puzzle, but you need to make sure that all of the other pieces around it also are finished in order for the pieces to fit together. So whenever I see a system like that that's not finished, and then the alpha, and I think that your perception of being disappointed that these things are not available, I think that's a totally fair perception to have, because as a viewer and a fan, you are hoping to see that in the game, and I think that a reasonable person could be disappointed in that. I do think, however, that it does make sense inside of game development. And like, have you ever done coding before?
No.
Okay. Well, I've barely done coding. And one thing that I've learned about coding is that you can get one wrench in the system, one, bracket is left and not right, and then the entire system falls apart. You make one change, and then the computer doesn't work, or, the program doesn't boot up. So when I see systems that are evolving, like kind of in real time that they're showing, have you ever built a computer before?
Yeah.
Okay.
I built this one.
Yeah, well,
barely.
there you go, right? And so I think that a lot of the problems that a lot of people are bringing up are, like, I remember whenever, for example, like, I needed to get more RAM for my computer. And so when I got more RAM for my computer, I went and I got this RAM, and then I realized that it wouldn't fit inside of the motherboard. And then I had to get a new motherboard. But then when I got a new motherboard, I realized that I now needed a new power supply. And I think that the way that you need to make sure that, like, computer components fit together inside of a PC and all of that fits inside of the case is kind of similar to the way that games work. And so if you have a game that comes out and all of those features aren't readily available in the alpha, I don't think that it's really fair to say that they don't necessarily exist, because they might not be implemented into the alpha. Because if you want to use the metaphor, maybe the motherboard isn't exactly what it needs to be in order for that thing to go into the alpha. And I think that's the way that it works.
So this is the first point of contention. This is the first talking point. The second talking point that Narc has is around the live streams. His contention now is that all of these live streams, because we don't see the assets from the desert, because we don't see these things from live streams available in Alpha 2, this is fake marketing designed to lie to customers for profit at a price point of $250 a bundle. He hammers home the point that people spent $250 of their own money buying in, thinking that this is what Alpha 2 was going to be.
Okay. So do you think they're going to finish the game? Like, I mean, so because you said at one point that it was like fakery, and then at another point you said that it was not a scam. So, like, where do you think the game is going to go?
So I think they're falsely advertising the current state of the game. Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, they've been falsely advertising the current state of the game to make funding. To help fund their game. So what I said in the quote that I used was, this isn't open development, it's funding at any cost.
Because of this, because none of these assets are available, it's his contention that these assets have never existed for anything other than sales, and they do not currently exist in game. Nor do they exist in some other offshoot of development being worked on, like Asmongold talked about in his previous clip. That's why I kept going in a circular motion. This fake marketing, as Narc said, it applies to all other live streams that have showcased items that have not yet been introduced to Alpha 2. As he said in his first video, this means that this doesn't exist, this doesn't exist, this doesn't exist. His contention is that all of these live streams that have showcased all of these assets, because they're not online for Alpha 2, it is not real. And so his contention is to compare Ashes of Creation to Chronicles of Illyria.
Do this receive a lot of negative backlash, selling promises and pre-orders on a showcase that doesn't accurately represent the game. But in this case, it's not even a downscale of what was shown, it's just a straight up lie.
Go ahead.
Yeah, would you still back the video game? Would you still have spent $250 knowing that all the stuff that they're showing isn't real currently, and it's just concepts? Because I can name a game that did this very similar thing, and it's called Chronicles of Illyria. And you know all about that one.
Oh yeah, I watched the video about it.
Comparing Ashes of Creation to a known scam game. And the third point of contention that Narc brought up, his point of view, is that he feels bad for misleading his audience for the last 2 to 3 years on the project. He doesn't believe that the current state of the game and the current level of production is where it should be, and for that, he's moving on to play other games. Now, this won't be brought up anymore in the video. Somebody's feelings can't really be debated. Like there's no facts around feelings, right? So I'm sure we've all had different conversations with people where they've said something and we interpreted it one way and we got in our feelings and we got upset or angry or whatever about something they said, and it became a miscommunication. Like, whether it's true or not, somebody's feelings are somebody's feelings. And so this is how Narc feels right now. That it's fine. That's his feelings. We're not going to address this anymore in the video. So those are the main points of contention. Number one, these assets are a lie. The live streams were a lie. And two, the price point was high. And basically, Ashes of Creation is misleading their customers in order to generate money for funding the game at all costs. So that's how I interpreted it. what happened next? Well, Steven got on the live stream and Steven started talking. And so to respond to number one, about the desert being a scam, Steven got on his developer tools and he flew around the desert, showcasing the older parts of the map, showing that there is lots of completed areas of the desert, and once again, that the initial video that Narc did was misleading. Asmongold responded to this because, as I said earlier, Narc meant that he implied that the entire video was about the expansion. And so Asmongold brought up the point of expansion, asked him like, hey, Narc said this was about the expansion. Can you explain what the expansion in the desert for phase 2 was? And so Steven goes on to explain that in phase 1, there were no nodes in the desert area. There are now 3 nodes available in the desert area to where you could appoint a mayor. You can level up these nodes. You can work to build buildings in these nodes. This didn't previously exist. And so they've expanded content currently to 3 nodes. And there is more expansion for the desert coming on later in phase 2. So December 20th, they added the node system for the desert. The company then went on vacation. They just came back yesterday. And now, until May, is the rest of phase 2, and there will be more iterations on the desert and more expansion of desert content going forward.
But again, the key point isn't so much whether or not he was at the edge. That's fine.
Yeah,
maybe he was 100 meters off of the edge. I don't know. But regardless, the point is he showed side-by-side comparisons of our showcase from 2 years ago, and he said none of this is in the game. That is what he said.
Yeah.
He said none of this is in the game, and that's bullshit. I just released a video
and
that showed
this
all
what
of
you're
the, all
looking
those
at
assets
right now. This is it. This was added into the game on December 20th.
Yes.
Okay.
This was added into the game on December 20th. Anybody who's been playing here, let me ask this dude. Here, let me just ask this guy. Hello, Mew. Hold on.
Uh-huh. And this is in the live version of the Alpha 2 that other players can regularly see.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on.
Okay. So you're asking how long
so
you've been playing?
I just asked him. He says since Alpha 1.
Okay. Somebody else saying they were there. Yeah. May I ask a question? All right. Were these nodes present in phase 1? He says no.
There you go.
All right. Well, he's gonna have to check his PayPal,
Hold
right?
on. Let's give him a hat. Let's give him a hat. We need to give him a hat.
Okay.
Now, the juiciest bit, in my opinion, talking about whether or not the monetization is a scam. Steven went into the discussion on the monetization of Intrepid, and he was very passionate about this. And he talked about how Intrepid employs over 200 developers, and they do full insurance for the workers and their families in San Diego, California, which is very expensive. He then went on to say that Intrepid is operating at a loss, and he has $55 million of his own money invested in Ashes of Creation, and he believes he will be investing another $50 million into the game.
Only thing I care about is that when someone makes false and defamatory statements and it gets 100,000 plus views and then it gets 500,000 plus views and it demeans the character of myself or the 230 plus families that I care that are putting their hearts and souls into this game, of which I put over $55 million of my own money into the development of this game. Yeah. There has never been a dime or profit that's been taken from this company in 8 years. When someone says that, it is utter, and pardon my French.
It's going to piss you off. It's bullshit.
It's complete fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Total bullshit.
Well, all right, I'm going to ask you, like, I don't know if you can really give me the answer for this. Like, $55 million, there's no way you can make an MMO with $55 million. Like, how much money do you think it's going to take to make the game?
At least another 50 minimum. Well, at least another 50 I'll be on the hook for. Yeah. Minimum. And by the way, we've grown to 230 developers.
Yeah.
That's not 230 developers in the middle of Croatia.
Yeah.
That's 230 developers in the middle of San Diego, California, which is the most expensive part of the United States.
Yeah, it's like what is it like?
And I'll tell you another thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you another thing. I take care of my developers.
Yeah.
We give 100% health insurance for our developers, their spouses, and all of their children as well.
Yep.
And that's on a game that's not making profit.
Right.
So for someone to demean my character like this and to drag me through the mud this way is absolutely out of character and wrong. Okay. It is just wrong.
He also went on to say that they have a 90-day return policy on the alpha too, so that if people feel like they were not having any fun playing, if they feel like they were getting something that they weren't expecting, they're expecting something more complete, they were expecting something more enjoyable, they want their money back, they can have their money back with a 90-day return policy.
Let me tell you another big thing. One other thing that is really sets my bullshit radar off.
Okay.
He says, that he doesn't agree with the pricing.
That was the big thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And that's totally fine. Like, this is specifically priced in part to restrict the number of people who are participating in this alpha because it's not for everybody. In addition, we have to pay for servers to host at a minimum 1 year's worth of time that our alpha is going to be live. Mm-hmm. And that $100 goes to pay for that 1 year's worth of what would normally be a subscription.
Sure. 1
year's worth of what must normally be a subscription. So how much, what does that come out to? And then on top of that, we're giving 1 month subscription with it. And we're also giving access to all the betas. So I get it. People don't want to pay that money. That's fine. We literally tell people, do not buy the alpha. This is not a game. This is not for you. You will lose nothing by not participating in our alpha. Mm-hmm. The game will launch and you cannot pay a box price for it. We don't even have a box price, which is, in my opinion, the best monetization model.
Well, that's the biggest injection. Yeah, of course.
Correct. So anybody that goes out there and says this is a scam, I am telling you that this game that I've sunk $55 million or more into over the course of the last 8 years, myself personally, so far, and will have to put in another 50 probably.
Yeah.
That you should not buy the game, and we have a 90-day refund policy on these $100 alpha keys.
Yeah.
And we do not have a minimum time requirement if people want a refund.
Uh-huh.
If you want a refund and you go in and you play this and you play our alpha and you test our alpha and you test it for 10 hours, 15 hours, we are granting those refunds because we don't want people to be upset about that. So it is total fucking bullshit that the way he represented us and the game in his video. And again, I don't want to pick on Narc. Like, okay, dude,
sure,
go play another game. Go enjoy your content creator career. Yeah. Go play Dark Souls. Do you? This is your life, brother. You go do you. But you lit a match, and you threw it behind you, and you said, fuck you, Steven, fuck you, Ashes, and fuck you, developers. And that's fucked up.
And so his entire point with full health insurance, the amount of developers, is to show like, hey, we are working on the game. We are working on this. We're working towards this. This entire thought that we are attempting to just profit off of players is defamation. It is not true and not factual at all. All this was a good listen. But I think personally my favorite part of the live stream was Steven casually pulling out the Snorse mount and showing that it is in fact real. For those of you guys that don't know, there was a point earlier on in the live stream where Narc is talking to Asmongold and he's explaining how all these assets from the desert live stream are not real.
Well, yeah, they showed this saying, this is the desert. There's many. If you go back and just watch that whole live stream, there is no context in that live stream that what they showed. This whole thing is just a concept. This is just the assets. They never once did they say that. They implied, they made it look like that this is the current state of the desert. It's not the current state of the desert. The desert probably didn't even exist at this point because the desert doesn't exist now. There is no desert.
Well, there is though, right? Because like if you look at the image that he showed, and if you look at it, you can see that there is a desert that's very expanded on. I think that you bring up a good point that like this image and this specific case with like this tower is not there.
Oh no, not just that specific. I would say everything in this trailer doesn't exist. Everything. And you'll be hard pressed to find it.
Okay, well why don't you just pick a random spot?
This one.
So that's not in there.
No.
Okay, go to another one.
The first one that he shows that pops up is this Snorse mount. Now, what is a Snorse? It is a snail and horse hybrid, an unholy machination of the coolest fucking mount I have literally ever seen. And so Narc is like, yeah, that doesn't exist, you know, implying that basically all these assets will never exist. They were there to trick customers. And so later on, when Steven is talking, he's showing Asmongold through the Befallen Forge, some new content that they have. He just casually pulls out the Snorse mount.
I just want to make a great game.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want to do. Oh, there's one other thing.
Yeah.
That was in our video here. Hold on. Let me...
Yeah, no, if there's anything else you want to cover, like I'm ready to see it or hear it or whatever.
I just got a message that was like, hey, you should show the snail.
Okay.
Because that was in the desert video.
Yeah,
too.
it was.
This is our snail.
That's the mount, right? The blue one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very rare snail.
Okay.
Its name is a wisp whelk. And you can walk around on the wisp whelk. I'm going a little fast.
Okay, so this is the one exactly from the video. Yeah.
Yep. And not only that, the snail is a little horse snail. We call it a snorse. Right? It still has some textures that need to be added. It's missing some mats that I think unfortunately got stomped when we did a master material update on the saddle. But you can take the snail and you can press period here and it'll turn into a little snail.
Oh shit, okay. So it's like a mount, like special.
And then you can just, oh shit, no! Oh, killed the fucking snail. God damn it.
Oh, wow. So it has like 2 different movement types.
Yeah, it has 2 different movement types.
Outside of that guy attacking you.
It's not just some sort of picture or some sort of animation. This is a real thing. I thought that was a very nice comeback from Steven personally, that, hey, yeah, this thing isn't real. It's right here. This was really tough to watch. There was a lot of doublespeak from Narc in this discussion, where he said in this interview that the desert doesn't exist. And then he walked it back to say it does exist, but it doesn't exist in the extent that it should be in the expansion. He then goes on to explain that he wishes the project well, and he thinks it will be complete. But then he compares it to Chronicles of Illyria, a known scam game, and then references a video that Asmongold watched a few years ago where it was called a scam in the title. Imagine, for instance, if I told you I went to an awesome party last night and you asked me to describe it. The picture in your head of that party would be quite different if I said it was like the Oscars, compared to if I said it was like a Diddy party. This comparison to me seems intentional, especially considering that on Discord, Narc has said he thinks the game might be a scam before. In my last video, I highlighted the point that he said that all of the live streams were a lie to make a profit, and the assets shown don't exist. But he said on his own live stream within 24 hours of that video releasing.
A bit upset because it was 4 years of my life and I cared a lot about it. Sadly though, I just feel like it's holding me back. Don't say I quit forever. I'm never going back to Ashes of Creation. Not because the game is shit, but because I don't like Steven Sharif. And I think the guy is a fucking dumb cunt. Okay? That's the reason why I'm quitting.
So on video on YouTube, he's leaving because of the state of the game. But on a live stream, he's not leaving because of the state of the game. He's leaving because of Steven Sharif. I don't know which Narc to believe here. I don't know which Narc's opinion to believe here. And I really think that even the staunchest Narc supporters would have a hard time agreeing with both points of view in every single one of these situations because they completely contradict each other. Even the biggest Narc fan that thinks Narc is right has to point out which Narc they're talking about in this situation, because none of these points line up. None of these points are congruent with any similar line of thought. If he thinks the game is a scam, fine. Stand on business and explain how you think the game is a scam. Don't allude to it with Chronicles of Illyria. If you think that it's because of the game, explain why. Show some facts. Show some actual proof and evidence. I also don't know how many other metaphors Asmongold could give in this interview to explain that something shown in isolation on a live stream isn't the same as the initial testing on a server. And I don't know how many more he had in him after that. It was over an hour, and it was brutal to watch. It looked like he was trying to talk to a brick wall. In the last video I did, I showed a clip from Jamie Chaos's experience in pre-alpha 2, and he explained from his experience how his initial tests were underwhelming, and over time they expanded details and features on the server. As a tester myself, I have seen them already expand the scope from phase 1 to phase 2, with nodes in the desert, introductory placeholder freeholds, obviously not done, but they're there, and the Befallen Forge, a completely new dungeon, high endgame dungeon that didn't exist in phase 1 that now exists in phase 2. None of this isn't some sort of object permanence, we're 3-year-olds, and all these things that always existed. These are things that have been brought online. These are things that have been brought online that didn't exist before and exist now. All of this is confluence to point out that the Intrepid team is adding things on in isolation to make sure they are stable before they add more things in isolation. You don't have to be a developer to know that if there's problems with a system, the best way to solve that is to attempt to isolate the problem, which is what they are doing. What Steven said from his point of view in this interview, what Asmongold was explaining from his experience as with minimal developer experience, but as a previous alpha and beta tester, what Jamie was saying from his experience as a pre-alpha 2 tester in pre-alpha 2 testing, and my experience as a tester in alpha 2, seeing with my own fucking eyes that they're adding things, all line up to show that yes, there are assets being brought online when they are able to be. All of this is before the fact that Steven then showcased the desert, showing that it is in fact real. Then showed that nodes were expanded to the desert on December 20th, bringing 3 new mayors to each server. Then, when Narc is so confident that none of the assets exist in the livestream, he's so confident that he tells Asmongold that he could go to any point in this Desert 2022 livestream showcase and point out assets that don't exist, and he points to the Snorse Mount, only to have Steven then ride around on the Snorse Mount on the Lineth Alpha 2 server to show that no, it's not a prototype, it's just not yet in the game because it's not fully detailed. This is the same type of confidence that got Narc to bet his stream that if the desert doesn't exist, he'd shave his beard off. And then he had to shave his beard off because he was wrong. Surely he couldn't be wrong again here, could he? As far as the monetization goes, I've been following Ashes of Creation for as long as Narc has, and for years now, they have been saying Alpha 2 is a test and not a game. If you were buying a key, you were buying it to test and help build the game and provide feedback and define bugs. This has been said so much so that there are even videos of Narc talking about their monetization from last year on his own YouTube channel that currently contradict what he said in the last week. In the August 2024 livestream, Intrepid set out what their intentions were for Alpha 2, and they were very clear that we are testing systems, and there are placeholder NPCs with placeholder behaviors, and we are testing the design and intent of the systems.
All right, let's talk about what you can expect and what we need. What can you expect? Well, you can expect that we're in a testing phase. And that means that Ashes of Creation is not done. What does not done mean? It means that not everything's going to be polished. It means that you're going to experience bugs. It means that you're going to see systems that aren't fully fleshed out with content. It means that you're going to have areas of the world that need some TLC. It means that you're going to see variant NPCs with some placeholder behaviors and potentially ability systems. You're going to see skill trees that need to be completely rearticulated. You're going, like
balance is not there, yeah.
There is a whole host of shit, excuse me, that, pardon, a whole host of things that is not done yet. But does it do its job in conveying the intent of the gameplay loop?
Not once does Steven imply that any of these areas are feature complete and will be up and running for Phase 2 of Alpha 2. So from my point of view, watching everything Narc has said, it almost feels like we're watching 2 completely different things. When you break down both discussions, you have one person that can't stick to the same talking points. And then those talking points he does say are immediately proven wrong by Steven Sharif flying around on the Alpha 2 server, showing what has been built. And if you feel like the experience you got in Alpha 2 wasn't what you were expecting, Intrepid has a 90-day return policy on the Alpha 2 keys. That sounds to me like a company that has been pretty straightforward with their intents and direction for a while now. The Alpha 2 test may be behind what you thought it would be, which I totally get. That is a far reach from the game is a scam and the team is trying to rob you of your money at all costs for development, especially when the live streams and their actions show the exact opposite. That's going to be the end of this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please provide in the section below and I will do my best to answer it. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.